Hi folks, Tom Coy with a brand new episode of Arbor Shield. And what makes this episode unique is that, number one, it's the first of the year, but number two, a lot of work was done on these photographs that are done behind me. Melissa's responsible for that, even though I'm not supposed to mention her name. And they came out really well. The second thing is the introduction of the show took, I'm guessing, 8 to 9 hours. And Robert and Matthew did the majority of work on that, and they were fastidious about every detail and every shadow and every. But what was amazing is after 8 hours, we ended up with 1 minute worth of intro. But nevertheless, they did a phenomenal job, so I appreciate all the work that all three of you have done, actually, in making this a new show. This is my final year as a law enforcement officer, and I have a special guest, my boss, Sergeant Tom Hickey, which Lord willing is also his final year. So, frankly, it'll be a memorable show in that regard. To my left is Patrick Campion, and to my right is KJ Miller. And if my youngest daughter is watching, well, never mind, because you aren't, I know. And last but not least is Shelley Quiroz. So today's episode, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to review, I think it's 7 or 8 film clips from YouTube. And they're relatively controversial in that they involve either, the shooting of a pet or an altercation with a teenager. And I purposely spent a lot of hours trying to pick those out because they're everywhere, number one. And number two, it seems to be the two topics that people really struggle with regard to police and the actions we take on these certain scenarios. A couple disclaimers here. As an officer, well, let's put it this way. My wife, who is not a police officer, lives in a perfect world here. That is to say, when she sees a scenario unfolding in the shopping parking lot or what have you, she usually has a very benign scenario about what's taking place, and it's very beautiful, actually, a lot of times. But when she asks me, what do I think is going on, mine's usually a little darker. And that's just based on 28 years of law enforcement. It isn't because I'm a cynical person, I don't think, though my wife would argue that. But law enforcement does change you. And some of that is for the better, and some of that, we could argue, is maybe for the worst. But nevertheless, that's reality. I don't think there is anything else unless anybody here has a question before we launch into our first videos. Nothing. This is going to be a very, very easy show. So I have to throw this out there. My wife said, well, honey, what's your next show going to be about? I said, well, honey, we're going to pull some videos from YouTube that are usually a little controversial, well, a lot controversial, actually. And I'm going to have guests in that I don't know anything about, and I'm not sure what the reaction would be, but it's going to be very productive. And she said, so this could be very controversial. I said, well, I'm counting on it to be. And she said, sweetheart, why would you do that? I don't understand. Anyhow, all right. So when you're ready, you can roll the first videos, guys.
Yeah. Number 33628.
Dog, get the dog! Get the dog! Hey, God! Back in the house! Get on the ground! You just saw Get on the ground! Get on the ground!
Police department! Sounds like a big dog. Police department, is anybody home?
It's disturbing video that's sparking outrage today. A Florida deputy shooting a dog that he says was about to attack him.
He came right at me, ma'am. I got it on camera. I got it on camera.
Now the dog's owner, Carla Gloger, is speaking out, and she's livid.
I told him he just shot a puppy. He wasn't attacking him.
The deputy was responding to a burglar alarm report at Gloger's farm near Tampa. With his body camera running, he jumps the fence and walks up the driveway when two Rottweilers come running. That's when he pulls out his gun. The dog owner can't believe what just happened.
He's just a puppy.
He came right out at me, ma'am.
He wasn't attacking you. I
I have it
want
on
to see the
camera.
video.
I have it on camera.
The dog named Cowboy is badly wounded, and Carla Gloger asked the deputy to end his suffering.
Shoot him all the way and get off my property. Now. Shoot him all the way.
You want me to kill a dog?
Yeah, I want you to kill him. You already killed him.
Thanks. Okay. So, I usually don't have this many guests on, so I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll start, you don't mind if we start with you, do you? Or would you rather start with my boss and give everybody else time to think?
Sure.
Okay, we'll go right to my boss. I mean, I know what my thoughts are as an officer, so we'll take the first one, Sarge. We don't know the nature of the call, right? But we're going to assume, I'm sure, that they are there on some sort of call. Maybe it's noise, it doesn't matter. The officers were dispatched to this location to contact the owner of the property, and you saw what unfolded. Do you have any thoughts or comments? Or?
No, and I think it's a fear that any police officer responding to a call in which we know there are dogs, with our technology today, a lot of the information on our dispatch is we are given a heads up that there may be a house that has a vicious dog and to be on alert for. So this is, fortunately, I've never had to experience this personally. This is definitely something that you always think about when there are pets, especially being a pet owner. I know how protective they can be and how defensive. And, you know, in one sense, they are doing what, you know, what animals do as far as the protection. On the other, when you have human beings that, you know, have to, in this case, are taking defense because most likely they would have been attacked quite well there.
Right. Patrick?
Well, I guess I follow in the same regard that when you're a stranger on somebody's property, you have to expect that if they have a dog, especially a larger breed that is there for protection of some sort, you're going to expect that they're going to come after the stranger on the property. So I guess the question is then, you know, what does your training tell you? Are you able to look at a dog and interpret the reality of how aggressive it is being, or by its posturing, or by its if it's actually trying to attack you, or it's simply just asserting its presence there? You know, from the videos, it's hard to tell. I mean, it's a split-second thing. So do you make an attempt to subdue the dog instead of shooting it, or do you simply just go directly to a lethal method? You know, again, I don't know your training, so I don't know exactly, but I do know dogs, and I know that dogs, even of that size, can quickly disable a human being. You know, in just a matter of a couple of seconds, you could be down on the ground.
Right.
So you know, it's a tough one. I
Yeah.
think that people who love dogs are going to look at that and be horrified, but if you really sit down and think about it, you got human beings on the back end of that camera who are there for a very specific purpose. They're not there as a threat.
Right.
You know, they have to take care of the situation.
Right. And I want to make sure I address each one, and this is dialogue, so this isn't question and answer, because you guys get really bored with that, and I understand. So jump in at any point. So my only comments with regard to your question and our training is, and I think we hear that a lot, regardless of what the situation is and law enforcement is, what does your training tell you to do? What does your training equip you to do? And that is a huge part of what we do, and that is why we train so often. However, the very nature of police work and how fast, and I can't say that enough, how fast your world can change from having a cup of coffee with a buddy on break to an armed encounter, because of a bank robbery that just took place, a mere 100 feet away. So those are the things, I think, my opinion, in many ways either make or break an officer. That is to say, an officer that can think fast on their feet, use common sense, and you have, most of the time in these situations, you have multiple things happening at the same time. So as I watch this, for instance, the fact that I can, it's funny, but the fact that I can hear those dogs' nails means they're rocking and rolling. They're not padding up the front door. They are tearing through that house, and they want to take, appropriate action in their mind. The other thing is, once they're outside, they shoot this dog. You have the owner who is very upset. Is he armed? I mean, I don't know. I don't know the nature of the original call, and it doesn't matter. I don't know what he has in his hands, if he's going to attack me because I just killed his best friend. I just don't know. So I've got to control this guy over here, or at least figure out what's going on. In the meantime, I have the dog situation here. I don't know who else is going to come out those doors. And I'm not trying to be melodramatic. I'm just saying, as an officer, a good officer, you have to take all that in. So,
okay, so a question about that second scenario. The officer jumped the fence to get into the property on what they said was a robber or a burglar alarm. Mm-hmm. Is that standard, or that you would just jump? I mean, there's no preceding action. We have no idea what the setup is, how that officer has attempted to contact people inside the property.
Right.
But from the scenario they show, that's just a random person jumping a fence. Do you not expect then that anything inside that fence is going to react that way?
Right. And playing devil's advocate, I want to make sure I give you an opportunity. Ladies, jump in at any time. But so let's take the premise that the burglar alarm has gone off because there is somebody in the house burglarizing it. And now I get dispatched. I'm not canceled, which is usually, most of the time, you'll be canceled. It was a mistake or whatever, and then you don't take any further action. So he wasn't canceled. And for all my intents and purposes as an officer responding, I'm going to assume, for the sake of my life, that this is a valid alarm, that we have somebody in the premises burglarizing your home. I mean, I'm not trying to be smart about it, but I'm just saying you would really take me to task if you found out later on that your whole house was emptied out and the deputy that was responding stopped at the gate because it said no trespassing or whatever. You'd be like, is this a joke or what? I mean, at least I would. So I understand it, and it's a good question. But again, he's not thinking alarm. He's thinking there is somebody in this home, and that's what I'm responding to. The fact that the dogs are there is unfortunate for the dogs, but you know what I mean? So that's how it unfolds there. Tom, any thoughts on that?
So I guess if I can step back to the first scenario, one of the things to keep in mind is if we were going, meaning the police, if they were going to a location, maybe a warrant arrest, and they knew that there are dogs on premises, then there'd be some, we don't have a dog or like a canine officer or the animal control. Thank you, the county. So we would set that up beforehand. In this case, it appears to be whatever the situation, what the call is. In that case, we wouldn't normally. We'd find out that the dogs are there when the officers are there. And a lot of times, if we hear an owner or make contact, we'll have that conversation like, make sure you secure your dogs.
I was very surprised that didn't occur.
Right.
I mean, just watching the clip, we had a long period of time where you heard dogs, and then it was clear at one point that they were no longer contained.
Right.
And nobody said, contain your dogs.
Right. And so as a dog owner, that, you definitely, even if those weren't police officers, if it was, what if it was a child coming to the door, not, asking for Girl Scout cookies?
Right.
The dogs may have, we don't know, may have had the same response. So in the first one, or the second one also, and I agree with Tom, is that, it's really kind of puts us in a tough predicament that with these alarm calls, and we know that most of the alarm calls are false. We can't go on the assumption that the odds are in our favor that this is false, so we're just going to call this a day and go on to the next call. That if something is mentioned, it would be the one that happens, the house gets broken into, and you said, well, you know, we're paying you as citizens to go and act on when there's alarm call. So, and I think in this case, again, it turned out to be false. The homeowner was home, and so, you know, it's really a tough position. And, you know, I don't, you know, any police officer definitely doesn't plan on, hey, plan on shooting a dog today. Also, if you've ever been bit, or the fact of a dog coming at you, I'd be hard pressed to have any person stand there and say, well, I'm going to try and do something to make sure the dog doesn't bite me.
Right.
So.
Well, I have to say that I have a couple of things to say about it. I'm a dog lover. I have 4 dogs. I have 2 pit bulls and 2 Shih Tzus. And as far as with the first clip, with the owner having quite a bit of time to secure the dogs, if I have somebody come to my door and all of my dogs are out, I'm securing my 2 pit bulls because they do sound vicious, and you can hear their claws. Yeah. You can hear them run through the house. They sound vicious when you walk up to the door. So yeah, that's my first thing that I do, is I put the dogs in their crate. But also, you know, I can see the point of view where if somebody's coming on to, like if somebody were to come into my home, I have one pit bull that might, you know, act a little bit more aggressively than the other one, because it is her home and she knows that necessarily you're not supposed to be there. But if I had a dog running up to me like that and it looked like it was going to attack you, you know, I think a human's life definitely takes precedence over an animal. And if it looks like it's going to attack you, you have to do what you have to do. If it was my dog, I might have a little bit of a different view on it, you know, because it's my dog. But, you know, the reality is, you know, a human life is worth more than an animal life to me. And, you know,
that's a good point.
You have to do what you have to do.
Yep. What do you think, KJ?
So my other issue with the second scenario, as opposed to the first one, was the second scenario, the dogs were much more within their dog rights. You know, I mean, they were in a fenced yard. They were in somebody's, you know, it was less clear to me in the second video that they were being vicious or that they planned to attack. Okay. I understand that the type of dog that they look like would absolutely give me pause. The first scenario was a little bit more clear to me that the dogs were being aggressive. How it would turn out, I don't know. One of my questions is, in terms of training, are you given any alternatives besides doing nothing and shooting?
Well, I mean, yeah, there are 2 what we call intermediary weapons, the taser and the mace. The issue with both of those are the chances of them being effective and you being able to deploy them within 2-3 seconds are minimal. I mean, what would you say? I mean, pretty minute chance that you'd be able to score with either one and put them out of action. And I mean, I've never been attacked by a dog. The only thing I can say is I've seen wounds from animals, and the bottom line is a lot like other scenarios we'll talk about. At what point is it valid that I shoot this animal? In other words, do they have to latch onto my leg first? You know what I mean? I mean, there are people who think like that, you know, they should be gnawing away on my leg before I'm able to, and obviously I don't espouse to that, so.
I was just thinking that in the first scenario, it seemed like the officer may have had more time to consider how he wanted to handle it. It's just, there was way more of a buildup.
Gotcha.
I think we have the benefit here of being able to sit and kind of armchair quarterback what's going on. And, you know, in a situation like the first one, you see an officer approaching an unknown situation and there's a door ajar. You know, he hears no response from a person, but he hears dogs running. You know, I know it's easy for us to look at it with all the time in the world to think about it, but in that case, would you ever just shut the door and wait for a more appropriate response from animal control or somebody else that could help you in that situation?
And that would have been, right, an alternative, and we don't know the whole thing. Was it to check on the welfare of the person? You know what I mean? So now you close the door, you find out it's locked, now this person's inside having a heart, you know what I mean? So I agree with you that it would have been, based on what we've seen, another solution, if you will, or a de-escalation, if you will. But okay, let's run with the next clip, if we could.
Stop resisting! Stop!
Get off of him! There's a kid!
Stop resisting! Get off! Stop resisting! You get out!
Can you get off of him?
Stop
It's a
resisting! Not
kid!
me!
It's a kid! Get the him! It's a fucking kid! It's a goddamn kid!
Turn around!
Stop!
Around!
Kid! Jaywalking!
Turn around! Turn around!
Don't touch him! Leave him alone!
Stay on the ground!
Sit right there! But I'm gonna shoot you some kid! The man!
Stay on the ground!
The goddamn kid! That's a kid! Are you serious? It's a kid! He didn't do nothing wrong! That is a child! That is a child! That is a child that was jaywalking right here! He don't have to do that to him! That is a child! What's wrong with y'all? That's a child! That is a kid! What's wrong with y'all?
Okay. Actually, that was one of the better clips I found because there is a lot of dynamics in there that are going on. So before we give you the law enforcement version, again, I wasn't there, but based on what I've seen, I can surmise. What are your immediate thoughts? And we will start.
That's a perfect example of why you should just do what the police officer tells you to do. Instead of, I don't know, resisting or whatever, just follow instructions and it won't escalate. What was the police officer supposed to do? You know, when you get stopped for something or whatever, you should listen to what you're supposed to do, not just, you know, resist. You know, that's kind of black and white to me, you know.
Okay.
So my first reaction is just, you know, with the crowd there, it becomes a very different situation.
Yeah.
You know, you're not, I'm assuming as the officer, you're not sure, I mean, the crowd seems to be escalating, so what are they going to do? I liked the fact that when other officers arrived, the initial officer just stepped away because again, my assumption, I'm not a police officer, is that you get into that situation where somebody is not listening to you. For me, it would just make me more angry.
I got you. Okay. Good point.
And I'm also trying to prove a point to this crowd that I'm in control and that you need to listen to me. And so I think that it continues to escalate when it's just between those two individuals. So I was really impressed, actually, that he stepped away and let the other
Very
officers handle
Yeah,
it.
I didn't even catch that, actually, when
It's tough. It points out the danger of watching this with very little perspective on what is there. I mean, I look at it from three different angles. One is, as a father of a special needs child, I see a child who looks like he may be in emotional distress. Now, I have a 12-year-old, almost 12-year-old, who's autistic, and I have no idea what would happen if you or any other well-intentioned officer were to approach him in a hostile situation where tempers and anger are already flaring. I don't know if he would be able to restrict his emotions enough to comply with orders. I look at it from a position of a member in the media, which is I know nothing about what's going on there, and until I have a lot more information, I can't make a clear judgment. But what I do see as just a person who doesn't have an inherent distrust of the police, what I do see is an officer behaving, in my opinion, very well. He's not escalating into violence as soon as the suspect stops trying to actively resist his activities. He doesn't hit him once the person lays down. He knows that it appears that there are people coming to support him, so he backs off. You know, the person's not attempting to flee. They're not attempting violence against themselves or anyone else at that point. He's close enough that if he does try to leave, he can try to subdue him again. But he does. He doesn't let his emotion get the best of him, and he backs just far enough away to de-escalate a rather inflammatory situation until someone else can step in.
I'd like to hear that you guys recognize that. You know what I mean? It means a lot. What do you think, T?
You know, and just a point about with autism is we really, that's an area of concern for police officers also. And we actually, because of that, we work with a lot of groups and parents with autistic children to hope that if this situation happens, that it doesn't escalate, if in fact this was something similar. I also, as a parent, you know, I look at this from both from the police officer's perspective and as a parent to say, you know, again, agreeing also that in the instruction with the kids, like if you're ever in a situation, like we will handle it afterwards, but be respectful, and you know, even if it's something minor, we'll get it squared away. But I look at this and say, you know, did this really have to escalate to this point? And then once other police officers get there, okay, if you wanted to fight with one officer, that's one thing, but when there's 6 or 7 officers, you're probably not going to win, and things are going to end badly for things. So.
Agreed.
Well, I had that discussion with my younger son. He's 18, and he had been pulled over by the police. And I told him, you know, you should probably roll down all your windows if it's at night and put your hands on the steering wheel, Brendan. You know, because I've told him that it's a bad situation for a police officer to walk up to your car. It's probably one of the most riskiest parts of your job, right? Is when you're pulling somebody over and you're approaching the car. And I said, just to give the police officer peace of mind, you know, let him see your hands. Roll down your window so he can see nobody's in the back seat. It's only to my son's benefit too, because, you know, you don't want things to escalate, you know.
Right. We have about 1 minute left and we got to take a break. But so my only comment on this, apparently this was a jaywalking situation where the officer asked for identification on a jaywalking, and then see right away you get, well, he's just jaywalking. But was the officer assigned there because of somebody was hit last week? I mean, we don't know. It's conjecture, right? But refused to ID. So what was a simple jaywalking turned into somebody refusing to ID. Now, as an officer, I don't care if you're 14 or 25, and you say to me, I'm not going to ID. I'm just going to walk away. Is that a personal affront to me? No. But does it set precedent for a society? I mean, where do you draw the line? You know what I mean? If I pump gas and take off, is that over the limit? Now yeah, I can stop you. You see what I mean? So laws are there for a reason, and especially jaywalking, to protect you. So that's how it escalated to this point. You can see by, and I'm not defending the officer because I don't know, but you can see by this kid's action, and I think I heard kid mentioned at least 25 times from the audience, this is just a kid. But if you look at the size, I mean, you know what I mean? And the reason he calls backup, I can almost tell you, isn't because he can't handle this kid, but because he realizes it's going south. And maybe, like you commented, that, you know, his emotions starting to get involved with that. So there's a lot of different dynamics on there. But, you know, whenever I hear, well, it was just a puppy or it was just a kid, well, I've had kids in 7th grade stand 6 foot. So I mean, you know what I mean. So it's a totality of the circumstances, we call it. But anyhow, all right, we're going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back.
Riding a bike in this pleasant afternoon surely invigorates you. But wait, you've just missed something.
Michigan Motor Vehicle Code considers bicycles to be vehicles while using the roadway. This means cyclists are required to stop at all stop signs and red lights and obey the other traffic laws, just as motor vehicles.
Okay, so as we conclude with that last video, it's just interesting to get your perspectives that you guys all picked up on. The initial officer kind of stepped away, and that's something I missed completely. So I appreciate you guys looking at that. Okay, having said that, let's go to our next video then.
Can you driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, please? Pulled you over today because you flashed me. I didn't even have my brights on. Yes, you did, sir.
Watch this police body camera video. 17-year-old Devin Guilford on his way to his girlfriend's house back in February. Sergeant Jonathan Frost pulling him over for flashing his high beams.
Driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, please. I did not have them on. Driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, please.
I don't even know you're an officer.
Sergeant Frost asked several times for Guilford's license. He refuses, questioning why he was stopped.
Am I being detained?
Yes, you are.
For what crime?
You flashed me with your high beams.
You had your brights on, sir.
Guilford begins recording their interaction on his cell phone.
You can get with the program and start to comply with this traffic stop, or you're going to be taken to jail.
The officer calls for backup as the situation escalates.
You do not have your driver's license on your person, correct?
Yes, I do.
Where is it?
You do not have to see it. I cannot see you had your brights on, sir. I'm not lying to you. I was just doing that to be polite. I don't want you to flash someone and have someone go off the road and crash. You know?
Do you realize that if you'd have complied with this traffic stop, it would have gone a whole different way for you?
The officer sees Guilford try to make a phone call and orders him out of the car.
Out of the car or you're going to get tased. Everything's being recorded, son. I got no problem with that. Get out of the car. Yes. Get down on the ground now. Down on the ground
now. Oh my
God,
stop yelling at me.
Down on the ground. Right here, facing me. Down on the ground now.
What do you mean?
Get on your belly right now.
This is what American...
Put your phone down and put your arms out to your side now.
Sergeant Frost kicks Guilford's cell phone away.
Are you all... I don't have a weapon. Hey!
Get your...
You can't do that!
Get your hands behind your back. You're under arrest.
Just about 90 seconds before backup arrives, Sergeant Frost tases Guilford, but he's too close for it to work properly. Roughly 14 seconds later, you hear gunshots. Sergeant Frost says Guilford attacked him, hitting him repeatedly with his fist. Take a look at this slow-mo, frame by frame. You can make the scuffle out just a little more clearly.
Central 2372, I shot one. Priority backup. Starting EMS, I'm bleeding.
This body cam video captures Sergeant Frost at the scene, transported to the hospital with these injuries.
Okay, and that's, you know, as an officer, that's always hard to see, because you think of a lot of similar situations that you were in that could have gone that way. Okay, we've started with everybody first, I think, except for KJ, so we're going to put you on the spot.
Fantastic. Well, that was a really hard one to watch because you knew from the beginning how it was going to end because of the tagline. And there was absolutely no reason for it to end that way. I think that you had discussed earlier about so many of these videos that we see, they just start with such a minor misunderstanding or just somebody refusing to do something that an officer feels is a valid request. So this one just baffles me. I don't understand how it escalated that far out of control.
Okay, okay. Oh, and we'll discuss this as a group here in a minute, but I just want to get your individual.
I don't know, I guess I have the same feelings. Did the police officer had to shoot him and kill him? Could he have just wounded him? Could he have backed away and got onto the other side of the young man's car? You know, I don't really think he had to shoot him. His face was pretty bloody, though, when you saw him in the ambulance. So we don't know exactly, you know, how he was punching him exactly and how he felt, you know, as far as how he felt like his life was in danger. But I don't know. I don't think he needed to shoot him, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's tough. You know, you see something basic, and I think all of us have been pulled over for one reason or another, and then you think, you know, why is this happening? But just a simple complying with it would have been done. You know, all he had to do was hand him his license and his registration. I think it points at there is a strain in our society that there's a mismatch a lot of times between an officer's impression of the situation from as far as, you know, the danger it poses and a person's impression of what they did or didn't do and why this officer may or may not be justified in interacting with him. I mean, you clearly heard him saying, I don't think I did anything wrong, and the officer repeatedly stating, yes, I did, this is why I pulled you over. You know, that fundamental disagreement right from the beginning is what led to that escalation. And I think we see that a lot, whether it's walking down the middle of the road or jaywalking or being in a neighborhood where people don't know you with a sweatshirt over your head. That initial sense of paranoia over, I see somebody doing wrong, could they be doing something more wrong, you know, pushes it to that limit. But again, it's on both parties there. You know, that kid, all he had to do again was just hand him his driver's license, proof of insurance, say, I don't think I did anything wrong, but here you go. You know, or just say nothing and hand that to the officer and move on with your life. But as far as the shooting, I mean, who knows? You know, just because the kid said he had no weapons, the officer has no idea whether that's true or not. You know, what you have is a person who's angry, failing to comply. Is that a point where your training teaches you maybe there's something more going on here, or maybe I need to be a little more defensive because this person's coming at me from a place of not wanting to cooperate.
And this is one of the reasons I enjoy doing the show so much is inevitably I learn a lot from having the guests on the show. So this isn't about, you know, Tom and I educating you on whatever the topic. It truly isn't. It's to have decent dialogue, and unfortunately we live in a society that increasingly doesn't seem to value that very much. But having said all that, so we all start with the same premise that what was a very minor thing with flashing his high beams escalated into deadly force. So I guess my question to the group would be, given the same scenario, you see that he's been asked for identification, all the things that legally you need to comply with and give a police officer. So forget anything after that. What would you have done? You're the officer. He's basically telling you, I'm not giving you what you asked for. Essentially, that's where we're at. Now what? And I'm looking for. I'm not looking for right or wrong. I'm
Maybe I would have called for backup.
Okay. Good.
Right. And that begs the question of, is the way that you're trained advanced to the point where communication techniques are differentiated between someone you feel has a trust relationship already, that thinks police are there for the greater good, or trust that you're there for good reasons, or someone like in this case that clearly has a fundamental distrust already built in of police, and that anything past that point, no matter how well you handle the situation, it's going to escalate into a more angry thing because he just doesn't believe that that officer is up to any good. It would appear he believed that he was being targeted unnecessarily or pulled over for no reason. So that shows that no matter how well you interact with him, he's not going to accept anything coming from your end. So in that case, do you handle the situation very differently? As suggested, you know, back away and say, listen, this is a person who's not going to be agreeable. Maybe I should go get a couple other people here to help me out through this.
Or maybe it would have given the boy a little bit of time to calm down and think more reasonably. But I also think that there's a disrespect issue going on too with this boy. I don't think necessarily that it could just be him, you know, being mistrustful of the police, but there tends to be younger kids nowadays are just disrespectful of authority figures, you know, and they know that they can use their phone and, you know, say, well, look at this and look at that. And I don't know. There are a lot of people that use the police as leverage for their kids too, where, well, if you know, you don't stop doing this or doing that, I'm going to call the police. Yeah, and then kids are afraid of the police instead of them thinking of police as friendly and they're supposed to be there to help them. They think of them as the enemy, you know.
So my thoughts on this, and then Tom can jump in, but so number one, to even start with, you know, the average person would say, well, it was just his high beams. You can see he's working at night. Clearly, one of the high indicators of a drunk driver, for instance, is they they've lost the dexterity in using their high beam. So we don't know the circumstances there, but what becomes evident to me as an officer right away is that adversarial approach that he has about very simple, and I thought the officer was very kind. He wasn't being belligerent, he wasn't being condescending, but it sends huge signals. For instance, in our training, it's called passive resistance. When you get that as an officer, passive resistance, it is an indicator of danger, that there is a reason this person is not complying. You know, did he have 4 kilos of heroin in the back? I have no idea. Did he just kill his stepmom and her body's in the back? I don't know. You know, and I know the average citizen doesn't like to think like that. I understand that. My wife is one of them.
I guess the question then is that training current though? I mean, I don't know how I adequately express this. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, I would have agreed with you 100% that passive resistance could be an indicator of a small percentage chance, but a small chance of something larger going on. With what's happened, especially in the last several years and the media publicity of it, does that change your mindset approaching somebody who's passively resisting, just thinking maybe this person just doesn't like cops?
Or maybe this person has a valid reason to be concerned about how the cops are going to treat them.
Right.
I was wondering how it has really, how much your training has been updated since you've started wearing body cameras and knowing that everyone else has a camera as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's all covered. And you guys make a good, valid point with regard to that. So our training is kept point, and I think law enforcement at this point is, how long do you stay in a situation, regardless of whether it's a traffic stop, whether it's a kid jail, how long do you stay in that situation hoping to de-escalate, that's what we call it, to de-escalate that. And experience and training, since I've been in law enforcement 28 years, is that the longer you stay in a situation where you have to take action, a ticket, an arrest, the longer you stay in that situation, for the most part, the danger level keeps creeping up, because you don't know who's going to come home while you're there, you don't know who's going to take action on the street. So that's my 2 cents. But
so you know, a couple things that, and one was mentioned about the backup, and a good point there. But I guess, and I'm not sure exactly where this was filmed, a little bit different for us in this county. We're very fortunate that backup could be from Ann Arbor, Washington County, area, surrounding agencies. But there are some agencies that backup may be up, you know, northern Michigan, some other, maybe 20 minutes away. And usually those are reserved for like I'm in danger, like we're fighting and I need help now. In this one, and things were escalating, but I don't feel, just watching the video, that the officer felt, and at some point he called for backup, that it was going to get to this extreme so quickly. And I think a comment made like, hey, how about backing off, or, you know, moving away, and all these. And, you know, it's easy, and as officers, we look at this also and say, you know, if that was me, you know, would I have done something different? And it's really easy in this stage to say, well, maybe he could have done this.
Yeah, hindsight is 20/20.
But there are so many things, unknowns, and again, when we're looking at something, again, this minor, and I think the officer stated, like, we could have been done, like if you had just identified yourself, okay, appears you're not drinking or whatever, I stopped, you know, and moved on. But things escalate, and now all of a sudden, I'm sure the officer and even myself saying, okay, this is really beyond, you know, this not like appears to be a convict or a gangbanger or something. This appears to be a young man, student, and like, if this is happening, what else, like, what am I missing? And I'm guessing that's probably what's going through the officer's mind, like, this is really off base here, that it's concerning me enough that I'm going to be persistent and move on to the next step.
Yeah, no.
Do you know the outcome of that? You know, if they did a toxicology test on the suspect, or if the officer
I know
was
the
held
officer was
responsible?
exonerated because they proved that he had, you know, this young man had been assaulting him. And by the way, just as an aside, then we got to cut because Tim's giving me an evil eye over here. But clearly, from what we know, the young man is unarmed. The issue you have anytime you have a firearm is he going to knock me out? And that's been shown time and time again that if a suspect can overtake you, then they have your weapon. I mean, the gun doesn't know who's using it, so it doesn't care. And then from there, they, quite frankly, they usually execute the officer.
Yeah.
So that's part of the scenario here. Okay, we're going to cut to, this isn't a final video, it's more like a what officers go through. I thought it did a nice job encapsulating, and this isn't, I don't want you to think for a minute, you know, poor us or poor we chose this. I'm very honored, and I know that Tom feels the same way, very honored to have done what we've done, and there isn't any part of me that wants sympathy from anyone for what we do. A little empathy at times would be nice. But having said that, it just pause for thought. So with that said, I hope this is queued up right, but we'll cut to the last video here. Go ahead, Tim.
This is the first time Officer Tim Purdy and 18-year-old Jeremiah Glover have seen one another since that dangerous day.
Long time no see.
Yeah.
You been doing all right?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And this is the first time Jeremiah's mom has seen the now famous photo.
Wow.
And this is what happened.
This is 911.
May 12th, North Carolina, Charlotte. Jeremiah's mother calls 911 to report her autistic son missing. He's got a history of violence, maybe suicidal.
We were doing good, and I don't know what happened today.
Purdy, a 22-year police veteran's just starting his day. On the radio, he already hears two fellow officers have found Jeremiah, but he reads something else in their voices.
You know what? Let me just kind of head that way and see if I might be able to help out a little bit.
Driving up, he sees the officers physically struggling to restrain the teen.
I pulled right here.
And senses it's about to go very bad. His next move is remarkable.
So as I approached them, I just kind of got down on my knees, you know, and tried to get to his level.
What did you talk about after that?
Football, the Panthers.
The explosive situation turned into a conversation. A fellow officer was so moved by the scene, he took a photo. It went viral.
So tell me this, was the getting down on his level training or something you have just learned?
Just something that I've learned over the years.
Jeremiah's distraught mom remembers racing up, fearing the worst.
The officer definitely was on his level, sitting with him, communicating, and my son was safe.
Purdy is overwhelmed by all of the attention, saying he knows other cops do similar things daily without any recognition.
There you go. Leave on a good one, brother.
What could have gone wrong has turned out more than all right, thanks to a police officer who showed up armed with compassion.
Okay, took me a while to find that one, but it was a good one. By the way, the officer in this reminds me of my boss over here, because that's him, and that's who he is. And your son is autistic, if I recall. So what are your thoughts, especially as you watch something, what are the things that are going through
No,
your
I think that first off, watching the first 5 seconds of the video, I knew exactly where it's going because I see my son in that, the lack of eye contact, the lack of emotional connection. That can be dangerous because without that certain sense of empathy, the violence doesn't have a personal connection. You know, he's not being violent against you, he's just being violent and doesn't know how to constrain it. So it could have gone sideways very, very quickly. In discussing the community relations aspect of it with over the last couple of years and in my job, we found a common thread that is that most officers' only interaction with people is on sometimes the worst day of his or her life. You know, if you're called out to a burning house, or even if you're just pulling somebody over for speeding, or in this case, an emotionally distraught boy, it's not that they're coming to you because they want to hang out and shoot hoops and have a nice conversation about the state of our community. It's because you're there to enforce the law, and they're a victim of somebody breaking the law, or they themselves are breaking the law, and it just changes greatly that relationship. We do know there's a lot of community efforts, outreach efforts on your part, on the county sheriff's department's part, on the other police agencies and throughout our entire county to interact with the community more often. It's just the nature of having lost the beat cops that we used to have. That again, you don't have a friendly shake of hands with the guy having coffee. You see him because he's been called to your location, and it changes the nature of that interaction greatly.
Yeah. Oh, good comments. Ladies, what do you think?
Well, I think that you don't see enough viral videos like that that are positive, that show positive outcomes. Normally, you just see the ones that have bad outcomes or that are controversial because they make the news, right? That's what people want to see.
Sure.
But I personally, I watch CNN all the time. And it gets old sometimes just seeing all the bad stuff on there being played over and over and over again. So it is nice when you get to see videos like that that have a positive outcome.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything to add to that.
What struck me as, but when we were talking about early, as a complete aside, is I forget how old he was, 15, I think?
18.
18.
Yeah.
That's a big.
He's
that's
a
a
big
big
kid.
guy, man. That's a big guy. But yeah, I agree with that, and I thought it was really cool that the officer goes, it's just experience, and there's a lot to be said for just working the road and doing your job year after year. That there are some things that can't be taught. So we're gonna take a time. Let's skip the next video, and let's go right to the PTSD one. Okay, so that pulls a little bit at your emotional, at least it does for me. And I'm not showing it because Tom and I are heroes or anything like that, but I think it does a nice job of summarizing what I hear all the pundits talking about. That is to say, everybody screams and yells. Number one, they've never done the job, but number two, cops need to do this, and they need to do that, and they need to do this, but I think a lot of times they forget, or maybe they don't know, that it does take a toll on you. The thing is that the average citizen doesn't want to hear or see or touch or wade through. A police officer does. The same thing with our veterans. It's the very same thing. So I just say that as a salute to my colleagues out there and my boss, who will be retiring soon. And anyhow, so Shelley, I appreciate you being on the show. KJ on the show, Patrick, and lastly, Sergeant Hickey. So with that, we conclude kind of a somber note, but anybody have any last thoughts, comments, questions? Now's the time.
I just want to say, it is tough. With 70,000 active police forces of some sort in this country and over 1 million sworn officers, I can tell you without a doubt in my mind, there are absolutely bad apples out there who should not be doing police work, that got into it for the wrong reason or have progressed with enough emotional damage that somebody should be taking them off the streets or stopping the interaction. But it's not so bad, and in my opinion, that we should fundamentally mistrust and lump together all police officers in this country and say that none of them can do the job right. I think that if more people did ride-alongs or had a moment to spend just even 2 or 3 hours to see what that life is like in a microcosm, you might have a little more sympathy and empathy towards that situation. A lot of room to work on community relations, absolutely, but I think it has to start with a coming together, realizing I don't know everything about you and you don't know everything about what's going on in this community.
Good point.
Because how much really does the average person interact with a police officer, especially when they're on the job? Probably not a lot,
With any luck.
Yes.
Any last thoughts, KJ?
I'm shocked at that statistic that only 4 to 14% of officers are
It's funny
identified
because
as
I was thinking the
suffering
same
with
thing about
PTSD.
I don't know where they got that, but it seems awfully low to me.
It seems awfully low, but I'm assuming it's in part because people aren't seeking treatment, so you can't identify them because they're not admitting to it. And I do think that is part of why we're at where we're at today.
I agree.
And if it was easier, more acceptable for people to seek some treatment for it, we wouldn't have some of the situations escalating the way they are.
Totally agree. Sarge?
No, I really appreciate being part of the panel here and having some great input from folks from the community, and appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being on the show. And that concludes our first episode of 2017. Give me some feedback with regard to the backdrops, the show, likes, dislikes. I can take it. I've been at this a while. It doesn't faze me. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.